Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and today I want to talk to you about video games. I mean, shock horror considering the channel, but I want to talk specifically about how they absolutely suck sometimes. Now I know that I also have a show on this channel called These Things Suck, which details this in greater detail, but today I want to talk about games that sucked on purpose. Now you might be asking yourself why a developer would want to do this. Why would they want to make a truly brilliant experience feel slogging and painful to get through sometimes? But you know what? There are reasons. Maybe it's to teach them a lesson. Maybe it's to make a player master a mechanic for later on in the game. Or maybe it's just been done to pad out the runtime. Either way, it's a chore each and every time you encounter them. So let's detail them today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 times video games sucked on purpose. Number 10. Final Fantasy XV Corridor Section. Final Fantasy XV was regarded by many as a return to form for the franchise. The presentation was superb, the open world expansive and the combat engaging. And on top of all of this, the game learned many lessons from the disappointments of the past, understanding what made the franchise work after many years of stagnation. However, there's one moment that really put a dampener on things, the dreaded corridor in Chapter 13. Now, at a specific point in this chapter, you're yanked out of the open world and placed into linear corridors that bring to mind the linearity of much lesser RPG experiences. It was painful, slow, and boring to boot. Yet the designers appealed to the fans, saying that it was meant to make them feel isolated and powerless. I'm sorry, but while the intention was very nice, it still absolutely sucked. Some fans took to forums to vent their frustration at Square Enix for once again limiting their freedom. And you know what? Such was the backlash that they eventually changed it and even allowed you to skip it if you've already played through the experience before, which I guess goes some way towards an apology. Number 9. No More Heroes, The Chores. So here we come to Grasshopper Manufacture and its underrated gem. Now with No More Heroes, Travis Touchdown's quest to cleave his way through the worst of the United Assassins Association quickly became a cult favorite thanks to a literal oozing of personality and a sublime graphical style. It's all about climbing your way up the assassination totem pole, but you know what? Before you can do that, there's a few chores that you need to do. Quite literally, in fact. So to enter these dueling contests, Travis must perform multiple errands that range from delivering items to tidying up his motel area to mowing the lawn for fellow citizens and of course trading items back and forth. It all went towards earning enough money to gain entry to the fights, but quickly got on the player's nerves. The higher the assassin, the longer and more tedious these tasks became. However, it was all intended, as Suda51, the game's lead developer, wanted to make the player feel the weight of their actions, to make them aware that they were willing to go through all of these boring tasks in order to enact violence. It's actually surprisingly deep when you think about it. But still, on the surface, it absolutely sucked. Number 8. Goat Simulator. Well, the entire game. Every so often, we get a product that lives and dies on its wacky premise alone. 2014's Goat Simulator is just one of these examples. Developed by Coffee Stain Studios, the game is, well, pure madness, with players controlling a rabid, seemingly supercharged goat on a mission to demolish the surrounding suburban towns and everything else around them. But it wasn't always like this. Goat Simulator actually started off as a piece of joke software that made the rounds in Coffee Stain's office after they'd finished work on Sanctum 2. But then somebody at the dev team thought, well, there's definitely a game in this, so they quickly knocked out the title in Steam Early Access. And later, the game would also arrive on consoles. With its ragdoll physics, mindless action, and minimal attention to detail, the game started to gain traction when it earned 3 million views on YouTube in a single day. And on a design perspective, it does absolutely suck, but for many a gamer there was a certain charm to Goat Simulator on release. The developer made full use of social media and viral marketing to snag a fan base, and you know what, at the end of the day, we didn't care. It was actually pretty rubbish. Number 7. Death Stranding, Endless Package Delivery. In another game where much of the core action sucked on purpose, Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding was met with a, let's just say, polarized critical reception when it dropped. The title lived and died on its vague plot, contentious gameplay loop, and somewhat unique online features, which caused a major split in the player base. The game's detractors mostly pointed out the tedium of the mission design, which is almost entirely based on delivering packages from one side of the map to the other. Traversing the uneven terrain, gamers are subjected to many frustrating obstacles on their path to glory. As protagonist Sam, Bridges would get knocked around by the slightest bump in the geography. Slipping down slopes, losing your balance, helplessly floating down rivers, and losing all of your cargo was extremely aggravating for the players. But you know what? That was entirely intentional on the part of Kojima Productions. Because yes, you're meant to feel the arduous repetition of transporting parcels, but also learn to never give up. And by putting you in the player's shoes, or lack of shoes in his case, and making you feel Sam's frustration, it sees you trying to build shortcuts and enlist the help of other players to make you feel like you're connecting the world together again. But be that as it may, many still wrote off Death Stranding as an annoying mess. Number 6. Grand Theft Auto 4: The Social Activities. As the undisputed king of open-world titles, Grand Theft Auto has had its share of iffy moments across its campaigns. But you know what? GTA 4 was the moment that the franchise grew up in a sense, taking on a more realistic and serious tone in just about every aspect of its design. And not every fan of the franchise was happy with this change, but it helped the title achieve the critical acclaim that it still enjoys today. One element, though, that reached memeable status was the game's social activities. Throughout the game's storyline, protagonist Nico Bellic would trade contact details with a range of unsavory individuals, many of whom could be taken out on social occasions or dates, drinks at the bar, the strip club, and most importantly of all, the great American pastime, bowling. While at first the social activities were a decent way of switching up the open-world action and could unlock benefits by making Nico's friends happy, Rockstar's experiment became rather tiresome after a while. Nico's contacts would constantly be ringing him up and asking the player to drop what they were doing to hang out, cousin, and lowered their happiness level if our anti-hero refused. If making socializing feel like work was the goal, then this side mission definitely accomplished that. Number 5. Mafia 2: Piling Boxes and Going to Prison. On the opposite side of the coin, 2K's Mafia 2 took the opposite approach to Grand Theft Auto and focused instead on telling a rich story rather than providing tons of activities for the player to take part in. This was actually a wise decision that helped make the franchise competitive despite complaints from open-world fans. But you know what? It wasn't always a smooth ride because at 2 key points, well, this game absolutely sucked. The first part is the game's opening, which sees Vito return from World War II to start work down at the docks. Vito's boss gives him, and therefore you, the player, just one instruction: pick up these boxes and unload them. It's a tedious and repetitive task, with the character's frustration growing with every box moved. In this way, the game is trying to encourage you, begging you to leave this mind-numbing work and get to the real money. You're being driven to a life of crime just as much as Vito is, making for a kind of brilliant contextual moment, but still, the act of doing so really does suck. And then it does it again later when he's sent to prison, because all the money you've saved over the game, along with all of your freedom, is taken away to serve the narrative. Ouch. Number 4. The Batman Arkham series: Finding the Riddler items. Rocksteady's Batman Arkham franchise has enjoyed high critical acclaim for more than a decade thanks to its sublime action, solid gameplay, and intense attention to detail. But one area of these games that's become a point of contention, however, are the Riddler side quests. Now, back in Arkham Asylum, the Riddler trophies, among with other items, were a decent way of switching up the pace. And the compact setting, filled with all sorts of little nooks and crannies for the villain to hide them, made for some exciting times discovering them. But when Arkham City arrived, the sheer amount of the collectibles increased drastically. Suddenly, gamers were tasked with finding Riddler items across a much larger map and with multiple interior sections to boot. This caused a drastic uptick in backtracking and wandering through previously explored areas with no shortcuts to take. Some players just chose not to pursue the side quest as a result, and this only continued into Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight. Ironically enough, though, the Riddler's endlessly conniving attempts to outsmart the world's greatest detective proved to be a strong fit for his character. Aiming to beat the Dark Knight into submission through sheer amount of tedium and long-winded exploration, taunting him at every step of the way, actually made him quite a brilliant villain. But unfortunately for the player, it was just so goddamn boring sometimes. And you know what really sucked? That it locked the best endings behind all of these. Boo. Number 3. The Metal Gear Solid series: The Torture Sequences. As pretty much the seminal stealth franchise in the medium, Metal Gear Solid was once at the top of the industry, delivering many a memorable moment along the way. But that's not to say that the franchise doesn't suck sometimes. Take the infamous torture scenes, which are practically a tradition now. In one game, you'll be resisting Ocelot, electrocuting Snake in a chair, and in another, you'll be forcing him through a corridor loaded with skin-melting microwaves. Often, these moments come at crucial times in the story and force the protagonist through some pretty nasty ordeals. But there's only one way through these sequences. Mash the action button as fast as you can to keep the protagonist's health from dropping to zero. The outcome is dependent on the entry in the series, but be that as it may, you'll have to be prepared for aching wrists and blistering thumbs. Now, the point of this gratuitous button mashing is to put you into Snake's perspective, to make you feel the pain and strain as much as he does. The player is suffering just like the character, but that doesn't mean that I want to walk away from this experience with hurty fingers. Ow, my little digits. Number 2, Dark Souls. Pretty much all of BLIGHTTOWN. Dark Souls, as is pretty obvious by now, is immensely difficult, but we all remember BLIGHTTOWN, especially BLIGHTTOWN at 10 frames per bloody second. Now this is the thing, upon revisiting this in the remastered edition, being able to see it in its full glory, and goddamn I wish I didn't have to see some of the sticky icky stuff that's there, it's actually brilliant. It's a fantastic piece of level design. But that doesn't mean that it's not absolutely ball-achingly annoying to go through. Toxic darts, get out of here. Flying bog roll monsters, ooh, don't touch me. Swingy, horrible bridges that you have to use the, let's just say, archaic jumping mechanics to get past. I'd rather stand on a spike. But still, I love this, but it doesn't mean that it also doesn't suck. The absolute worst. And number 1, Assassin's Creed 3, Connor in Prison. Now, Assassin's Creed 3 might not be as revered as some other entries in the series, but it definitely had its share of memorable moments, most notably with the new environments to explore and the often underused setting of the American Revolution. In the game's latter half, however, things take a pretty wild swerve. Connor heads to New York for the first time in the story, which is the game's second major city. After spending many hours in Boston and the surrounding frontier, you're looking forward to exploring this new area. So Connor walks in for the first mission in Sequence 8, only to find himself abruptly arrested and thrown into prison on order of the Templars, who have got a strong foothold in this region. At this point, the story, and the entire game for that matter, comes to a grinding halt. Birdwell Prison is a tight and confined space with no room to run around. For 2 more missions, you're forced to try and escape, and it's met with failure. It culminates in Connor's proposed hanging, where the player is led through a jeering crowd to the gallows. It's an incredibly slow-moving interlude that purposefully takes away the player's control, while also reinforcing Connor's native roots as the biggest loser in this conflict. It's really sad and quite moving, but at the same time, jeez, did it ever suck. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 times that video games sucked on purpose. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal gaming channel where I stream every single Wednesday and Sunday. But before I go, my friends, I just want to say one thing. We talked today about video games that sucked on purpose, but you know what, my friend? Your life right now does not need to suck. You can do whatever you want with your life. You are free to make choices, you are free to make decisions, you are free to grow as a person, you are free to learn new things, to develop new contacts. All it takes is that spark to never give up, to not be afraid of failure, and to embrace change, whatever form it takes. I wish nothing but the best for you, and I hope that you achieve love and happiness in your life. Now go out there and absolutely smash it. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.